welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass, a series of digital-first conversations that we do here on the Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Tonight, we're talking about all the big opportunities and challenges as far as the startup ecosystem is concerned, and asking you, the viewer, to give us your feedback as far as all the changes that we're seeing here in the startup ecosystem. Our panelists addressing some of the concerns, including the layoffs, the shutdowns, and also talking about what to look forward to. Let me introduce the panelists. Tarun Joshi, CEO and founder, Joint Ventures. Sheetal Bail, partner, Growex Ventures. Nitin Agarwal, CEO, Global Bees. Gentlemen, so good having you, three of you here with us on the Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass.
Thank you, Sunanda.
Thank you.
Let me then start off by asking the three of you to really talk about your businesses, your organizations, your venture, and also for you to take the next 30, 40 seconds for your opening comments and remarks to really talk to our entrepreneurs and to talk to our audience who's logged in today about what perhaps is exciting you at your venture. Let me come to you on that first, Tarun.
Yeah, Sunanda, maybe I can go first. Hi, my name is Tarun Joshi. I am the founder and CEO of Joint Ventures. We are building a house of brands within the popular celebration space. India is known for celebrating multiple private occasions, festivals, and we sort of look at building brands like IGP, Interflora, Musca to capture the entire celebrations ecosystem. So that's a bit about me. What I think we'll looking forward to this 1 hour of great conversation with all of you.
Absolutely, and it's definitely exciting to be speaking to someone whose fingers on the pulse, really what's going on in the consumer space, and that's something we will discuss in this next 1 hour. But let me come to you next, Sheetal.
Thanks, Ananda. Let me quickly introduce myself and our firm. So I run a seed stage fund called Growex Ventures. We are focused on investing in very early stage companies in the B2B and emerging technology spaces. We typically invest in companies which are as early as the idea stage to prototype, proof of concept, often pre-revenues. Portfolio is broadly of two types: tech-enabled B2B, where technology is being used to influence traditional sectors like financial services, insurance, health, etc. And the other is tech-first B2B, where we take bets on certain technologies. So, for example, in this fund, we've done space tech, we've done robotics, we've done electric vehicles, genomics, etc. I lead all the emerging and deep tech investments, so I'm probably in a good position to talk about that.
Let me come then to our third panelist today and ask you really, Nitin, if you can talk about your business, what your venture does, and also what's exciting at your company that you want to let us in on.
Yeah, so as Global Bees, basically we're investing with the digital-first consumer brands in the country. And the idea is, like Tarun, provide that platform and infrastructure to the brands that we invest in to be able to scale exponentially without, investing the kind of capital that is typically required for a standalone brand. So that is what essentially we do. So we not only provide capital, but we provide a fair bit of infrastructure, right, from growth, marketing, supply chain, etc. And we bring in that expertise with the capital to ensure accelerated growth for the brands.
All right. So then let's start by really calling out some of the big events and trends that we've seen here at the Leaders of Tomorrow as far as what's going on in the startup space. And the first thing that I do want to talk about, is first and foremost, we've seen the commentary coming in from the RBI as far as inflation and the macroeconomy is concerned. Let's talk about the domestic economy. What is the outlook, perhaps, or of the domestic economy, especially given all the changes that are taking place in the macro economy and perhaps a trickle-down effect as far as India is concerned? Sheetal, to you first.
Sure, Sunanda. So I'm going to take this from the viewpoint of early stage startups. So the last few weeks have been a time of dramatic shift, as a lot of people now say, the winter is coming all over again. This is something we'd experienced a few years ago, and this is now following a couple of years of significant exuberance. So 2019 to 21, Sunanda, had been a period of increasing exuberance in the whole startup ecosystem, where more and more funding was available, more and more companies were starting up, valuations were becoming larger, etc. People were, we generated a whole bunch of unicorns. But with the global tech meltdown and some of the other geopolitical changes, Ukraine, interest rates in the US, etc., everybody's gone into somewhat of a freeze mode at this point. And that's having a trickle-down effect on the early stage ecosystem. So, it starts off with the IPO, publicly listed companies, starts then going down to later stage, Series D, E, F companies, starts coming out of ABCs, and eventually hits seed stage. So the big change we're seeing is that now everybody started focusing on sustainability again. People have started focusing on cash again. People are realizing that funds are not going to flow as freely as they were before. So there's sentiment ranges from cautious to panic, to be honest, in the ecosystem at this point. Funds have issued warnings. Funds are now have tightened their purse strings, and in general, people are focusing on creating things which are built to last and solving things in a more real way, as opposed to just throwing money at problems and doing land grab.
Would you tend to agree with that, Nitin? Sheetal is seeing a bit of a freeze mode in terms of what's happening.
Yeah, so I would just divide this question into two parts. One is from a consumer perspective, right? From a consumer perspective, after last couple of years, because of COVID, I think the demand patterns, if you look at the categories, they had drastically shifted. And what we're seeing essentially this year, those demand patterns being normalized based on the categories. So there are categories which kind of did not do well during COVID, and then you had a lower base effect, and they're seeing a pretty good growth. So if you were a category like jewelry, for example, right? I mean, which is associated with marriage and function and going out, the demand slipped, and then you're seeing the base impact and a pretty good growth on those categories. At the same time, there are certain categories which literally blew out during COVID, and they're seeing a base impact and then a normalization of growth charts. So from a consumer pattern perspective, I think there's a bit of normalization and base impact which is happening.
Okay, we've got our first question, which is coming to us already. Our first question is coming to us from Mahima Kapoor. Her question is, what are the milestones which are needed for a successful fundraise? We'll come back to talking about some of the big events and trends that we've been discussing, but I just want to bring in our first audience question. Maybe Tarun, you could take this on first. Mahima's question, what are the milestones which are needed before one can go for a successful fundraiser? I assume she wants to know.
Sure, Sunanda. No, very good question. I think the most important is for you to identify a product market fit. I think just testing out that there is a real demand for the problem that you're solving or the product that you're offering to the consumers. If that product is differentiated and if you can create enough amount of love for your product, I think that is the first test, which then comes to the question that how do you scale that idea which actually has been tested or validated by consumers?
Time for a quick break here on the Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass. Tonight, we're talking about all the changes that we're seeing in the startup ecosystem and discussing the top opportunities and the top challenges. Let me just sort of piggyback on Mahima's question and talk about funding and what we've seen in the news of late, and really ask for the three of you if you could call this out as a trend. Here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, in our 10th edition, we're asking our experts to call out the big trends and the big opportunities, as well as the big events which are impacting the entrepreneurial space. Our experts on this masterclass talking to us about the fact that the next 6 to 8 months will see a resurgence as far as funding activity in the startup ecosystem is concerned, that there is no concern and no cause for concern as far as the layoffs go, because employees who are being laid off will get hired much faster and at much higher salaries compared to what was happening previously, and that the fear and panic that we're seeing presently is not going to stay for long. Those reassuring comments in this snippet that we have for you in this Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10 highlight. Listen. Perhaps not an event really in what's going on as far as the entire startup ecosystem is concerned. Reports suggesting that VCs, PEs, and the people who really hold the purse strings, like the three of you, are perhaps being a little reluctant right now compared to the sharp spike that we've seen in fundraising in the last couple of years, the past 6 months perhaps being a complete anomaly in terms of what's been happening the past few years. Why is that happening? To all three of you, I don't know, Nitin, do you want to take this on first?
Yeah, I mean, as Sheetal just mentioned, I think across the board, because of the global macroeconomics, I think people are looking at deals much closer, the unit economics much closer, taking longer time to do the deal. But from our own perspective, we continue to look at, interesting companies and portfolios. It's slightly easier because, the good part about this environment is now you can take time, there are not 10 people running after a deal. You can take time evaluating it, you can have more reasonable discussions than that is going on. I think a lot of it which happened over the last 18 months was unreal, to be honest. And that's a process of normalization. It happens every 3-4 years. And that's how the life works. So I would say nothing out of normal. And at least from our own expectation perspective, we do not see a very long winter. And we do see things going back on track in next 6 to 8 months.
Okay, that's definitely good news to hear. What about then the layoffs that we're seeing? I had the chance to catch up with the Minister for IT Government of Karnataka earlier, and I did pose this question to him, and he was of the opinion that this is just a part of the regular business cycle. He says, as the government, looking at what's happening in the startup space, we are not worried. To the three of you, would you want to echo that sentiment?
I would completely agree. I think now all the companies are taking a hard look at their cost structures, at their efficiency and economics, and there's some bit of right sizing, which always is good and kind of desired, and I think that is going on. Again, it depends on from company to company. We know enough startups. Unfortunately, in this environment, the negative news gets highlighted more, but there are enough startups who continue to hire. And there are some who are kind of adjusting to their demands and, those kind of economics which are running by the business. So I would say it's unfair to paint the entire ecosystem because 10 companies out of 1,000 did some layoffs. I think that's par for course in any industry.
Okay. Sheetal, when I was speaking to you offline, you used some very strong words when talking about the present environment. You said fear and panic, but that is at odds with what our other panelists are saying and with what even the minister was telling us. Why do you feel that there is fear and panic just looking at the present environment? If you could reiterate that for us.
So let me, talk about this in a little bit more detail, right? We're in the midst of a highly warranted correction. Last year was out of control, raises, valuations, rate of funding, etc. What's happened in the last few weeks, maybe in the last few months, is that we've seen that irrational ebullience replaced with thoughtfulness and temperance. But this is not a reason for despair, on the other hand. Right? This is the part where I completely agree with Nitin. Au contraire, I actually think it's quite a cause for celebration, right? Because now again, companies start focusing on real problems with sustainable business models and creating businesses which are built to last. Founders will do more with less. And, for example, there are really good side effects like the fact that engineering salaries are becoming reasonable again. Last year, engineering salaries, people were regularly shifting at 2x, 3x kind of stuff. That's not happening with the layoffs. Now, there's more rationalization on the salaries. In general, people are being able to do it more with less. Investors are back to getting a little bit more bang for their buck. When we started this fund 3 years ago, we were regularly doing seed checks in the 3 million valuation range. The last 3 checks we were doing in 2021 were in the 10 million range. And the risk reward ratio starts completely changing. The final thing I want to say is another reason why I'm saying there's not reason to despair is that this money is not going to disappear for long, actually.
Okay.
Because too many large funds have far too large war chests which they're sitting with, right? And funds have life cycles. They have 8 to 10 years life cycles. They cannot say, hey, I'm going to not invest for 2 years. They will start deploying quickly. We're just in that phase right now where there's tremendous uncertainty. So all everybody is saying is, let's take a pause for a bit, right? And then watch the next 1 month, next 2 months. Let's figure out how deep does this rabbit hole really go. And once we figure that out, let's get back to normal, right?
Okay, sure. I have to take our first poll question at this point. And my first question is, does adopting advanced technology boost startup growth? Do let us know what you feel. And I will be taking the results of the poll in just a moment from now. What about those employees who are getting impacted, though, because companies are shutting down? A very renowned investor who was associated with the media space, is invested in a few media companies, was also associated with this company. Reports are saying that, one fine day, employees in the morning get an email saying company is shutting down. Are there more instances of these perhaps being expected? I know all of you are saying 6 to 8 months, money is not going away for very long, but in these 6 to 8 months, could we perhaps expect more such shutdowns and layoffs? Open to all three of you.
So I can't comment on shutdowns and layoffs, whether they'll happen and not happen. It will be usual to the company. But what I'm pretty sure about is there's so much of talent being hired across the ecosystem and across the board. India is, in general, a talent deficient country. There's so much of economic activity and growth activity which is happening. So I am not, at least seeing from my perspective, we regularly get inbounds through our investor ecosystem, and we look at literally these people who are getting laid off from some of the companies, and by the time we are approaching those people, they're already placed, right? So it's quickly I don't think we are reporting enough how quickly they are being hired as well.
Sure. So the results to the first poll have come in. 95% of you saying yes, 5% of you disagreeing with the question that we posed to you. Let me then take in our second question. This one is coming to us from Ankit. He says he's Director Operations at Gorang Tech Private Limited. I hope I've got that pronunciation right, Ankit. He says, what do you think is the scope of a startup offering different IT services under one umbrella, like designing, development, digital marketing, SEO support services, etc.? Tarun, maybe this one to you. Would you want to respond to this?
Yeah, sure, Sunanda. No, it's, I think at different stages of the company, there is a need for specialist solution in certain areas to companies which are in early stages, requiring them to have a sort of comforting relationship and a very open relationship with someone who can provide more and more services. Mm-hmm. I think there is scope for both. And if you choose your sort of target companies, it definitely helps.
All right, gentlemen, so much more to discuss, but in the interest of time, let me take closing comments from the three of you. Through this, answer of yours, if I could ask for the three of you in the next 30 to 40 seconds, if you could use that as a masterclass of sorts to talk about what perhaps has been advice that you've received in your entrepreneurial journey that has really helped you, that has benefited you the most, Or if you could talk about what it is that you look at when you're looking at a small business, whether it is to mentor them, whether it is to invest in them, or just what your advice is for small businesses in the mid to short term. What would you like to tell them? Let me come to you first, Tarun.
So I would say think big, think scale. I think culturally build organizations which are fundamentals first, respect first, avoid mediocrity. And I think if you're on this path in a very structured way, you will see large organizations being built in a very automated manner and in a very sustainable manner.
Okay. Nitin?
Two things. Focus on customer. Start every question and every discussion with a customer, and don't make yourself and your families as customer. Look at the target, the TAM as they say, right? And just build it backward first here. The amount of influence that the ecosystem noise, and which is prevalent from some of the questions which are there, funding news, Google, ups and downs, just filter that out. That's 5%. Just focus on your consumer, focus on the value proposition. There is a large enough market.
Sheetal, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, my advice is consistently focus on solving real problems, problems of necessity, not problems of luxury. Create businesses in a way that they have sustainable models, create organizations which are built to last. And adding a little bit from what Nitin said, if you create a great business, cash follows. And take a little bit of a leaf out of the books that Infosys, etc., set up for us. We don't need billions of dollars to be able to create unicorns. We can do them other ways too.
It's been a fantastic conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of those takeaways that you've given us. And I trust all of you who've logged in today have also been able to take away multiple learnings from what our experts have told us today. Thank you to our 3 experts for taking the time today.
Thank you, Sunanda.
Thank you.
Thank you.